What's going on, guys? ShadowNinja here. Today I want to revisit my Prismatic Titan build. Feel a little bit more positive about Prismatic. Not saying I'm totally in love and I still want desperate, meaningful buffs to Titans and PvE, stuff like that. But overall, I have been using this build a ton and I wanted to share it with you guys, give you guys some updates and kind of give you the way forward of really maximizing Prismatic Titan in all forms of content. This is something that has potential in everything, including Grandmasters, and that is really nice for what it goes for, and honestly the diversity of this build specifically with some exotic stuff. Now, as per usual, there will be a dim link in the description. It will be in the pinned comments, but it just depends on when I get around to it. I won't be around when this video goes live to do that, but yeah, just want this build, pull it from dim, pretty damn easy, pretty damn fast and quick and all that stuff. Everything I mentioned here, including alternatives, will definitely be in that link for you to pull from. But before we get into all the details about this build, just want to mention, if you guys enjoy the content and want more from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified for when I do drop more content. So the Prismatic class on Titan is very interesting, and it will stay interesting until more buffs are done or the options for aspects or additional aspects or fragments, whatever it be, changes. I'm not saying that they gave us the worst groupings possible, but if you're a Titan main, you definitely feel like, hey, we could have gotten a lot of better aspects. Not saying we need Banner of War or Sol Invictus, but we could have gotten something better. But that's just my personal take. If you guys are Titan main, I think you guys would agree with me. But with that being said, there still is stuff here, despite the lack of buffs Bungie has given to the class so far. Now, the main thing you are going to need when it comes to exotic armor is going to be a stoicism rolled with point contact. The main reason is that a melee hit with Spirit of Point Contact, doesn't matter what type it is, will trigger a jolt effect on the target you hit your power melee on. And for consecration, either the low flame or the high flame, you know, the ground wipe or the high slam will trigger a jolt, whichever one hits first, and this is massive. Now, on top of that, that jolt, that ability, that trait is super effective in all forms of content, whether it's a raid, an ad dense Vanguard ops, whenever it may be. You're going to be clearing out crowds faster than your teammates are going to be able to comprehend, which is fun. Sometimes I get a message in the voice chat of like, hey, I can't even chain together my stuff because you're killing everything. Happens, it's true, I'm sorry, but that's just the power of this Prismatic build. Now, besides the point contact aspect of the exotics and what you need, another main factor and important part of this build is going to be the Kvostov exotic auto rifle. Now, the ricochet benefits and all this stuff, I don't gotta go into details, is incredible as an exotic by itself. You pair that with Prismatic and it is absolutely juiced. Now, the reason for that is this primary, since it's a kinetic damage, will fill up both the light and dark meters of the transcendence bar, and the ricochets also count toward that and stack towards that. It is insane, and with you generating tons of orbs of power with this build, with some mods and just the generation with your consecration, point contact, things like that, there's so much here that it's just, you're filling up that transcendent meter to really go transcendent and then fully ramp up and devastate the sandbox in PvE, because Transcendent, especially with the Titan Prismatic class, is honestly super powerful and super essential. Every time you get that and you are in a pickle or you have a lot of enemies, you should pop it, because being Transcendent as a Titan with Prismatic really gets the gear going in a different level with this build, that it's nice, and it really does highlight what could be done and the true potential of this Prismatic class in all forms of content, which is great. But I've done a lot of laying the groundwork of this build. Let's jump into the game and talk about it. So here on screen is my subclass area, and there's a couple things that are very important. So when it comes to your aspects, we're going to be going for somewhat fragment based. Now, the only aspect I will be picky about, in my opinion, is going to be consecration, because when sliding, activate your charge melee ability to launch a wave of solar energy forward, damaging and scorching targets in front of you as you leap into the air. This is incredible, and then when you power slam, it basically ignites. This plays really important with the artifact mod. We'll get into it when we get there, but again, this is the only aspect I'm going to be picky about. Now, next to that, we are using Drenger's Last. This works with the thruster that we are using. This isn't going to be the barricade into the lashes that go out. I honestly prefer the thruster. You could use something like Diamond Lance. Unbreakable's fine. Not really. I want this to be great, but Knockout you could use, but you're going to sacrifice a fragment. And in this case, I think the more fragments, the better for Prismatic. When it comes to your abilities, we're using Thruster over the Barricade. Really like this potential. When you use the Thruster with Drenger's Lash, you pretty much leave a ball where you were, and it pretty much suspends everything around you, which I find more consistent and better than the Barricade. I don't know. I like the Thruster. It feels a little bit more agile. I'm moving all over the place. It's really nice and things like that. My personal jump is High Lift. When it comes to your melee, you want the Frenzy Blade. It's going to give you 3 melee hits, which is great because you can use this for 3 consecrations. And then Shackle Grenade. The reason why we're using this one is that it's going to pair great with our darkness meter. Consecration is going to count as a solar damage, which counts as light. Shackle is going to count as strand, which counts as dark. So if we're not using our Kvostov, we're going to be using these 2 things to really build up that transcendent meter on top of using Kvostov. When it comes to the fragments, the first one is Facet of Hope. This is actually fixed from when I did talk about this. While you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly, which is very nice to kind of make up some lost ground with some verbiage that can help you with class ability stuff in built-in stuff. So this really goes a long way of helping some of your regen, especially for your melee. Facet of Purpose, picking up an Orb of Power grants either Amplified Restoration, Frost Armor, or Woven Mail, or an Overshield based on the damage type of your super. Really important. Didn't mention this in the beginning. We're using Hammer of Soul. We want Restoration. Anything else, not saying I don't like Twilight Arsenal. I love Twilight Arsenal. But Avoid Overshield is nothing compared to Restoration as a buff. If anything, if they would have gave us, effing Devour instead of Avoid Overshield, then maybe I would recommend Twilight Arsenal as an option. But right now with Prismatic, I am solely a Hammer of Soul advocate because of Restoration when you pair it with Facet of Purpose. Next to that, we have Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. The reason why this is so good here is we're using Consecration, which is light damage. And this grants melee energy, which pairs great because we're rapidly defeating things with light damage. So this is really essential to getting your charges of power melee for Frenzy Blade using Consecration up there, which can be a little bit on the slow side if you're not really building towards it. Next to that, we have Facet of Dawn, power melee hits. Grants you Radiant. Again, there is an artifact mod if you pick up Orbs of Power that you can go Radiant as well. The only frustrating part of point contact with the jolting and the Consecration melee is that if the jolt kills a target, it doesn't count for orb generation. But if your ignition from Consecration kills the targets, then it does count for that melee orb generation verbiage nonsense. So you'll see that in the mods. But Facet of Dawn, again, just making sure we're being a lot more consistent with our radiance, because with the jolting element, it can get a little bit inconsistent with orb generation, which is an unfortunate part of this build. Next to that, we have Facet of Grace. Defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus transcendence energy. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus transcendent energy. Great stacking, whether it's for yourself when it comes to using Kvostov to gain even further transcendence energy. Again, a reminder, when using a kinetic damage, this isn't stasis, this isn't strain. When using kinetic in itself, light and dark will be built together, and this enhances that regeneration more effectively, which is great. And then next to that, we have Facet of Devotion. Defeating targets with affected stasis or strand debuffs grants bonus light transcendence energy. This is a little bit overkill. Trying to work it out. We do have a strand debuff element. Sometimes our buddies have stasis tied to them in some way or another. So again, it's just a fragment that really works well with me. If you guys want to switch this to something else that you find valuable, be my guest. But in general, this is what we're rocking here. So when it comes to the seasonal artifact, this is specifically what I got. Now, the main things that I really find important is going to be transference, gain increased grenade and melee damage while transcendent. This is fun. This is awesome. No sense not to have it. Weapon final blows while transcendent. Refund light and dark energy after transcendent ends. Again, goes into the whole idea of we want to be transcendent as fast as possible, as much as possible. Now, Shield Crush, when you're amplified or radiant, your grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. Is going to be great for our shackle throw, and just make sure we have that. That suspension has stunning potential when it comes to unstoppables. We won't really benefit from the melee regeneration part because of the verbiage that is required to trigger that side with Woven Mail, Frost Armor, and Avoid Overshield. But again, the amplified Radiant part for Grenade is perfectly fine. Radiant Orbs, because we're prismatic and picking up an Orb of Power, makes us Radiant, which helps our damage output, which helps us with anti-barriers, giving us that buff. We also have Solar Fulmination, your ignitions do increased damage in an increased radius. This is incredible. Makes no sense not to have it. We're rocking an incandescent apparent action. And then we also have our consecration, both things that have scorching and ignition. It's fun. It's great. But those are the main 4 mods you want, but in general, yeah. Now when it comes to our mods for our armor pieces, for our heads, we're rocking 2 siphons for kinetic just to enhance and duplicate and go crazy with orbs of power with the Kvostov, and then we got hands-on for that super regeneration on melee kills. For our gauntlets, it's really important that we break this down. We have heavy-handed. Your powered final blows create orbs of power, and then causing damage with the grenade reduces your melee cooldown. The goal here is to reduce our regeneration rate as much as possible, and as you guys can see with my stat meter on strength, we're sitting around 58, which means we're on the 50 side of things. We have Font of Vigor, which you don't see it in this buff, but this is a plus 30 to my strength stat when I have an armor charge equipped, which is really good and really viable. It makes the 50 into an 80 in a sense, and that is a nice difference for our melee cooldown. For our chest piece, we have strand reserves and sniper damage resistance. Again, nothing here too crazy. Specifically, it's just based on what I'm rocking when it comes to circular logic as my power weapon at the moment. When it comes to our leg armor, we have solar scavenger for our Baron action. Again, you could probably swap off this and put on elemental charge because we are, generating fire splites. We're also rocking kinetic weapon surge to just help. Now, this does not stack with radiant, I'm pretty sure, but again, just making sure we have damage as often as possible. If you guys feel comfortable switching this out, then be my guest. There are plenty of options like recuperation to throw in there as well, but again, that's just personal preference. And then invigoration reduces melee cooldown each time you pick up an overpower. Really important. Again, reiterating that our melee regen is the #1 goal of this prismatic build at the moment. And then for our stoicism, our exotic choice, Spirit of Contact is what we're rocking. This is the main thing you want. We also have Spirit of Assassin, finishers or power melee final blows grant invisibility. This is honestly pretty damn viable and high-end content. Going invisible, not getting shot at, helps with that survivability. Even if we do have restoration, you want to be invisible, helps further. And then we're using Font of Restoration to help with our recovery stat. Nothing too crazy there. Reduces melee cooldown when you're using your class ability. We're using a thruster, and then shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. So again, falls into that orbs of power regeneration. And then when it comes to stats, guys, the main 3 you want, first up, resilience, survivability, automatic. Next up, if you guys want to actually build towards strength, be my guest, but in this case we have discipline as the 2nd priority and then strength as the 3rd priority, but we have Font of Vigor to kind of aid with that. But yeah, that's pretty much the build, and the drip is sexy. Nothing too, nothing changed too much on when the last time you saw this, maybe just the shader, but altogether that is the build. So I hope that breakdown was thorough and was very informative for you guys. Again, this build has capabilities in all forms of content, especially with those overload champions in mind, and clearing out dense adds and adding to some survivability. If you guys have the exact stoicism I have, then awesome. How you see it in the gameplay is how it's going to perform and how it's going to look. If you have something else, that's perfectly fine. If it's like not Spirit of Assassin, but Spirit of Point Contact with that class setup is pretty damn important. Altogether, curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this build and what your thoughts are on it. Any recommendations, improvements for me to tweak and give a go, be my guest. I'm always open to changing things up. If you guys enjoyed the content, be sure to drop this video a like, helps with the video a ton. And for more from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell to be notified for when I do drop more content. But that's pretty much all I gotta say on this one. Hope you guys have a good one. ShadowNinja here, and I'm out.
Let me hit you with the bleed blue.